Hi guys, back for another session in the podcast studio. Thanks for joining us here with myself, Chris Wall, as always, and partner in crime, Ricky Stoddart.
Now then, everyone.
Anything making your piss boil this week, Ricky?
I like that one. And I think that's got to be on first Koi Talk edition T-shirts.
Sort of like a slogan now.
Yeah,
a few people, I've seen it banging around some forums as well. And
awesome.
Yeah, I think it's I'm thinking of a tattoo, and that might be it.
No, probably, but I'm too
Not for today.
I'm a bit too tired to even go there.
Yeah, it's been a long week, mate. So had a few requests about topics to talk about, and one that we're both pretty passionate about, so we're going to get into it. Jumbo Tosai.
All right.
How to identify, how to release that jumbo potential, and then I think really scale it in a little bit and have a degree of realism for people that are looking to get the Tosai dream, you know, because it's not easy, and obviously it's a numbers game. It's been said time and time again. You know, if only a breeder can ensure that every one of their offspring were jumbo Tosai with high potential, they'd be in a better position than they are, no doubt. So where do you start with this subject, Rick? If the typical scenario, the questions that have been coming in is, I'm looking to purchase some jumbo Tosai.
I think the first is getting some perspective on it. I think that's always where I like to start. And I mean, let's dial back to days before I was even involved in koi. You know, Tosai were, I mean, as we know, as it's evolved, 7 to 10 centimetres, 10 to 12 to 15 on the bigger end, going 15, 18, they're already thinking, God, that's a decent size. And then the first sort of version of Jumbo Tosai was when they were hitting 20, 25 centimetre with them. That is literally, at that time, around me sort of first visits to Japan, that was all of a sudden like, wow, look at these. Which, I mean, you dial back and sort of bring it back to today, and
that's laughed at.
It's crazy, but it's still a reality, you know. 20-25 cm is a good sized Tosai compared to where they were at. But I mean, now we're seeing Momotaro, Sakai's, all them guys, you know, breaching 50.
I know, it's insane.
Quite consistently as well. I mean, I don't know what's gone off at Sakai in the past couple of years, but I've noticed a little bit just looking at auction listings, the sort of jump in size the fish have had is remarkable. And crazy stuff. But then that's where it comes in, you know. What are the expectations when you're saying jumbo Tosai? You know, this is I think always the first bit to look at, and then what it really actually means, because I think it's important to know that obviously the biggest Tosai in the world is still going to be governed pretty much, you know, 90% of the way by its genetics. There are always the freaks in the batch which become, you know, the parent fish for the next generation to get a bit bigger. But on average, as you know full well, the governing factor is the parent fish and the lineage. So I can see it. You can push most fish in size just through changing technique and using the right technique. But what you can't do is make them grow beyond what they're capable of. And it's the jumbo Tosai thing really is more around. We always seem to get something going past here, don't we? Is governed by the size. You're not going to push them beyond that for a start, and it's this really the Tosai thing is linked to the raising. The size of the Tosai linked to the raising, and it's how quickly they get into that point. I think that's what this whole obsession has become about. But ultimately, if a fish has got the capability to grow to 80, 90 cm, it's going to get there one way or another. You know, you can lose headway. Obviously, throughout them early years, you know, up to about 3-year-old, you do want to try and get as much as you can, but it's not the be-all and end-all. You know, if you've got a 12 to 15 cm Tosai, it goes into the mud pond at that size, the actual, you know, centimetres of growth that it gains are going to be far more than a jumbo Tosai. It just plays catch up a little bit.
And I guess jumbo is relative to the farm as well. What one farm, like prime example, Sakai, 50 plus cm for Tosai is just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It's not going to be achievable at, say, like a Fuji, or you know what I mean? It's completely different.
Completely.
What's jumbo at one farm will not necessarily be jumbo at another.
It's all got to come back to actually the genetics and not the size of the fish for the age. Obviously, there's indicators when the fish are big for their age.
Yeah.
That's a given. But, NND Showa, prime example here. We're looking at Showa. Yeah, typical Showa genetics are they were never the monster of the 3-go Sankey. They're a little bit stouter. It took them a long time to sort of catch up. Even Dainichi, Dainichi was the exception where they sort of was pushing the 80-ish borders, going a bit beyond that at times, but not massively and not all the time. Momotaro comes along and creates the Mako Showa, and that's putting the Mako Kohaku DNA into Showa, which rocks the boat a little bit. There's some sacrifices there. Then next thing you know, the Showa are a metre long. Yeah, crazy. But then likewise, there's still lineages out there. NND Showa are superb, but I've seen this consistently now. They pile it on. We can pile it on them up to Yonzai, up to about 4 years old. They're hitting 78, 75, 78, going on for 80 cm. Then that next year, 4 year, going into 5, the growth just drops off a cliff.
I'm sort of glad you sort of touched on that bit, not specifically to NND, but I think people's reality of Jumbo Tosai and realising that are two very different things.
Yeah,
obviously, the genetic part is the predisposed part that we can't influence, if you will, and then it's down to raising techniques. And obviously, one of the big things that I always used to get is people going, well, the fish raced up in size and then the growth really slowed down. And I always sort of say to people, it's stuck. This will always stuck with me. This little sort of anecdote or fact that a small Tosai, say 10 cm, 15 cm, at the point where they double in length, on average, their body mass increases by 8. So obviously to maintain that, and then when you kind of word it like that, you go to say if you had 10 fish, your feeding rate to keep that growth at that level is just on a scale that can't be applied in most ponds. So I think a bit like that, people look for that word as well, the jumbo. If that word were removed from the fish.
Yeah, this almost falls into like the last edition, doesn't it? Almost it's going down that Tatigoi route. Yeah, I'm sort of in tune with that now. Yeah. So it was, don't get me wrong, this has come from the Japanese. It's their own branding as well as we've had Super Jumbo Tosai over the years and all the rest of it. But reality is, you're governed by genetics. That is always going to be the leveller in all this. And you talk about techniques, Yugenji, they've produced their Nisai, even still now, it's consistently, they're like a 20-25 cm Tosai. Nisai at harvest, 40-45 cm on average. Sanzai, 50-55 cm. Yet there's lineages there across most of them varieties that can push 80-90 centimetres, some beyond. Some of the parents are that big. It's just the way that they raise them. The difference in the end outcome is at Momotaro and Sakai, you might have a fish that's 80 odd centimetres at 5 years old. At Yugenji, it's probably going to be 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah, sure.
But then there are counter arguments to it. The late Ikarashi Kazuto, people who's visited that place were always blown away by the condition of those fish, the skin, the size. Always had big fish there. So his lineage was more than capable. It's just the age of the fish at that size. They were always a bit older. But his technique, it was very severe. They had a full winter fast for 5-6 months after harvest. You saw him in spring, and there's just nothing on him. They're just gone. Then all of a sudden they exploded in mud pond again. But everything he did, and I think it was probably undeniable, some of the best skin quality ever seen in koi has been seen in that fish house. And that's all to do. His whole vision was about longevity of quality as well. And he believed that the sort of what he was doing and not pushing them too hard, that full winter rest, fast, everything he was doing pushed that longevity.
Well, that's another point that we're going to move on to. The whole jumbo, 50 cm Tosai, 45, 40, name the size. do you feel there is a ceiling for fish in terms of where they can be pushed and its impact that it has on the fish long term?
Yeah, I think so. I think, again, we're governed by what they're capable of genetically, and this seems to be coy. There only seems to be so far we can push them. Obviously, it seems to be a couple of pushing the boundaries a little bit. Like I say, the old Sakai at the minute, I've seen them sizes creep up, but what they're also doing is improving the genetics all the time. So they're probably pushing that ceiling up themselves, but what you can't do is take them well beyond what they're capable of, because then you start pushing them in the wrong way. And I know I always use them a lot as an example, but this is where I've obviously spent a lot of time on the inside. The time when NND was actually formed, so obviously there was independent farms before. Umo Show always did really well, but I'm focusing here on the Marusho Sankey more than anything. It was built on the Sadazzo bloodline, which was always known for its quality, especially its sumi, but they were never known for size. These were like a 70-75 centimetre Sankey pushing the top end, 80 if you're dead lucky every now and again. So they formed NND, and all of a sudden they had all these new resources at their disposal, big ponds, a lot of underground water that they're using, and a different mentality that, right, we're going to start raising really big fish now. So they literally changed resources and technique that year, and they got the size. Absolutely, they pushed all of a sudden Tosai with the same size as last year's Nisai. However, a Nisai, likewise with Sansai, same. Especially the Nisai part, these fish didn't look right. They were not carrying it well. You know, I think this is the difference here, where you see the genetic side of it and what you're capable of doing to a fish. They'd been pushed through technique and environment, but they weren't carrying the weight properly. They were carrying it where they shouldn't. They looked uncomfortable. Big bellies, you know, and that kind of thing. And I'm not talking absolutely every fish, but the general picture was, shit, that don't quite look right. And I think they were aware. I'd even mentioned it at the time, you know, but I think it was possibly 2 years later after that, I was out there in the summer working, and I did a Sankey spawning, and all of a sudden in this net was a Sankey that to my eyes was uncharacteristic of Marusho Sankey. It had traits, as I'm looking at, an absolute jackhammer of an head, huge mouth, just the whole proportions of that fish. The style, roughly maybe thereabouts. The thing that got me is the Sadazzo Sankey have really quite small,
refined sumi,
very small, delicate, looks nice. This didn't. This was a bit blockier, heavier sort of sumi. And at the time, I literally said I was literally looking him in the eye. I says, "This is different. Where's this from?" He says, "Oh, my breeding." I'm like, "Yeah, righto." And it weren't actually till about 6 months later, it lay out at Bagley. It was a Sakai Sankey that they bought. Yeah. And literally overnight, boom, changed everything. They just changed the structure of the fish. And all of a sudden now, Marusho Sankey, there's several pieces swimming around in the main facility that are touching a metre and holding it. You know, they look comfortable with it. Yeah. The Tosai look comfortable with it. You know, everything I witnessed prior to that fish, all gone away.
I think another thing for a lot of hobbyists when they chase the sort of using inverted commas jumbo sort of dream is the realism of achieving that as well. It's all well and good kind of going, well, I got Tosai at 40, 45 cm. They go into a pond where it's probably not going to be the environment to justify that style of body for whatever reason, be it feeding regime, temperature, physical size of the pond, stocking. There's a lot of variables that come into play. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people go 75, 80 cm, that's not that big. And it's kind of like, that's mad.
Another thing with expectations.
And you're kind of going, obviously, having been fortunate enough to been around the block a little bit, there aren't many ponds that are full of 85 to 90 cm fish at all.
Let's face it, there's not that many of them in Japan.
No.
If you actually look at it and the percentages of fish at these farms that are that size and of quality, more importantly, that's the bit I'll stress, over 80 and of serious quality. because you can get fish there,
Yeah,
but then getting that fish there and having the skin still intact and looking relatively
pigment,
youthful and everything, and the right body mass as well. I've seen fish raised to 90, 95 and even a metre. They've not got a body mass.
Yeah,
that's a different thing, when you've seen full on, Sakai fish at that kind of size and the packing. It's a spectacle.
Different level,
because the body volume is what brings it all alive. And that's the same at any size. You can look at two fish of say 50 centimeters in a bowl, one with powerful, good body volume, and another one that's really lacking. And the one with more body volume, you presume, is 2-3 centimeters bigger. That's just how visually that sort of plays out. So yeah, the volume is a big aspect to them big fish. But let's face it, 70, 80 centimetres is a cracking
big fish.
So if you're doing that and getting the quality and the body and everything in check, superb. And that's to me where it falters, and that's where, to be honest, outside of Japan, I see the differences. And a lot of people who's raised fish big, it's raising them big, maintaining that quality and getting the volume, because I think it's underestimated the sheer amount of food alone it takes to actually push them to them places. Yeah,
and I think I've seen like hobbyists, customers of mine, raise fish pretty big, and particularly on Go Sankey, just don't maintain the quality. And obviously at that point, and obviously it's all relative, if a hobbyist would rather have lower quality fish but really big,
that's it. If that's for
that's
you,
absolutely fine. But most of them don't. They kind of then get disappointed at that point and go, the red's not very intense, and it's at that point when you're selecting those smaller fish to grow. Let's face it, that's the part that majority of us absolutely love. It is the enjoyment of the hobby, raising something and hopefully realising that dream and creating something really special. We love it. At whatever scale and hobby you're on, it's what we love doing. I think what I'm trying to make a point is, if that's your only goal, then it makes it difficult to attain any other areas. Does that make sense?
I think it's probably just if that is your goal, stick to single coloured stuff. Just tie it in properly. Everybody's in. This is the biggest thing that's been for me since I started. The whole purpose of Koi Talk is just to share that enjoyment and that passion. That there's something in the hobby for everybody. You've just got to find what works for you and not let anybody tell you that it's not right or not good enough. That's something I'm really, really hot on, because if it is growing, this is what we're talking about. And this is how conversation can easily be taken out of context and steered in a different way. If you're wanting to grow jumbo, but it's relatively going to be hard to achieve, the fish plastered all on the walls next to us and all the rest of it, then find another way that does work for it. And single coloured stuff. I mean, the pond of Karashigo at my place at the minute, you cannot deny that pond is absolutely mesmerising. And there's a little bit of other stuff mingled in, but 95% of it is all yellow. I if that was my pond, I'd take that. It's awesome. It really is. You just see all that lot together like that. It's awesome. Then because you flip it then to Karashigo, and that's a fish that just has naturally got them genetics. It becomes rocking like that.
You're literally sort of opening the door for me. That's where it might be a compromise, but it's certainly more attainable. I always hark back to customers of years gone by. I had a customer who did just that. He'd never spend more than 150 quid on a fish, but he might spend 150 quid on a little chag. But it had to be banging.
So this is it. I think
And then 4 years later, I went to visit his pond for once. I hadn't been. I just because it wasn't local. Blah blah blah. Man alive. That's how to do it. Never spent more than 100 quid on a fish. And I'm not joking, mate. If you would have seen them in Japan, you'd have been like, And he had a bit of luck with getting females as well.
Nice. But if them we speak of them Karashigo, them Okawa Karashigo, came to market the first batch earlier this year. I think they were like 95 quid.
Yeah.
That's a serious. That's about as true as a jumbo lineage gets. They're scary, what's packed into them. That's achievable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Then you've got to have the setup, but just adapt to what you want to do. It's all possible. Well, it's just like I don't think enough people, the whole conversation about jumbo can make koi keepers feel inferior at times. If you're not set up for doing it, but. Let's face it, what were we saying over winter? A couple of our favourite ponds was all the chibi Nisai, the small Nisai stuff from Aoki. And what a picture that is.
Yeah.
Pond full of 20, 30 centimetre fish kept to the highest standard. Look, absolutely buzzing. I know it's going off topic a bit, but there really is something for everyone in the hobby. And that's what I'm always keen, as much as we can, show the different sides of it. But also, reassure people that no matter how you want to do it, if it's what you want to do, happy days.
So typically, you, when you're at the shows or over the years, and the often I'm sort of in the shadows a little bit. I don't get too involved at the time anyway, and you get the comments, that's got a body on it to get to 90, 95. And you hear it all the time, and it's just like, have any of you guys ever raised a fish to 95 cm? It's a serious achievement. And it's just, I think it's thrown around as if it's a bit of a common.
Honestly, all the clients I've
quite
worked
achievable,
with,
what I mean? And that's a serious feat.
People I've worked with over the years on this, when they've, back from Marita, when they've purchased big fish and done it, it is a mega challenge to get the stuff there. Doable, but it's a serious level of commitment. Oh. Interesting topic, but I agree with you. I think the message here is you watch out for that word, really. Just pay attention, because it really is a little bit misleading in a lot of ways.
And when people, hobbyists, are selecting, always used to be the case of, typical scenario, you're looking at half a dozen fish. Which one's got the potential? I mean, obviously, the jumbo perspective, or the perceived jumbo perspective, are obviously fish that the breeder has deemed they've got that physical capability, but that could be, I think people fall into the trap in thinking that the fish that don't have that jumbo tag can't grow, which is obviously a bit of a trap door to fall down. You've just
prompted me on a big one here, and one thing I harp on about a lot: bone structure and body. Because it's, and then we come back to genetics, just because the genetic pool says yes, that fish has the DNA, the capability, it's not got the physical attributes, it's still a no-go.
You need to judge the fish.
It's not got that right bone structure and setup, it's not going to get there. Just because the genetics are there, it's literally be limited then by its physical structure in what it can do. You can tell that very early on with a lot of them, by body length, head size, head shape, all the rest of it. If it's not there, it's not doing it. So it's none of it's a given. This is why it's important, really, I think, for people to understand and learn as much as possible about all this stuff. And just ignore the sales patter that's out there, really. Learn to trust your own instincts and look and pay attention to what's in front of you, and get to know more about, obviously, what's behind it all as well from the breeder's perspective. You're on to a winner. Yeah,
pretty solid advice as always, mate. And a subject that I know that's probably for me one of the most enjoyable aspects of koi keeping, growing and developing fish. Hoping that you hit the jackpot moment, or even if it's just educating yourself for future selections.
And that's what I think, coming back to the whole numbers thing in this, the numbers game in koi, full stop, is just that is a big expectation that needs to be managed.
It's difficult from a hobbyist perspective when you've got limited.
Absolutely.
So
that's why it's important to learn as much as you possibly can. And it's going to come from learning from experience as well. You can sit listening to us, reading books, doing whatever it is.
You got to do it.
Your eyes have got to soak it up and let it sort of sink in, what's happened. But just to manage people, grand champion fish, the fish reaching 90 plus of quality, so few compared to what's actually spawned every year. The number drop-offs are just incredible, from hatching to even
Yeah.
harvested Tosai in September to then, Nisai that's kept from that. Just massive drop-offs every year. And then actually getting it there unhindered, stories I hear of people that's had the dream living on, a guy I know got a cracking fish from a farm that's been raised at dealers. We're lining this up. This is a possible GC contender. It's done the business. It's gone from Tosai. It's the 90s, approaching that meter mark. Everything's looking good. Swim bladder went.
Ouch.
That's a lot of years invested.
Yeah.
Time, the hope, the dream, and then swim bladder went.
Yeah.
That's it. Game over. So, yeah, that's coy. It keeps you on your toes.
Livestock, mate, isn't it? There's perils with it, but
it's tough. But this is, I think, in order to really succeed, you have to have your head firmly wrapped around all this stuff that it can happen. It does happen. It's no good kicking and screaming. You just try again.
Yeah.
Yeah, challenging stuff.
Good. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that, guys. Little snippet into the world of Jumbo Tosai. No doubt we'll expand on this in future issues.
Yeah, obviously, if there's any more questions, related to what we discussed, pop them in the comments around.
Thanks for your time, Rick, as always. And we'll catch up with you on the next session.